So, the question is on Vipallasa Sutta, or also translated as the inversions. It's Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Fours, number 49. Because there are 4 inversions of perceptions: inversions of mind, inversions of view. What 4? The inversion of perception, mind and view that takes impermanent to be permanent. Number 2, the inversion of perception, mind and view that takes what is suffering to be pleasurable. Number 3, the inversion of perception, mind and view that takes what is not self to be self. And number 4, the inversion of perception, mind and view that takes what is unattractive to be attractive. These are the 4 inversions of perception, mind and view. Then there are 4 non-inversions. Non-inversion that takes impermanent as impermanent, suffering as suffering, not self as not self, and unattractive as unattractive. So the first inversion of perception, mind and view is the inversion of impermanent as permanent. So inversion of taking anicca to be nicca. And as we spoke in some previous talks, anicca, you can translate it as impermanence. It's absolutely fine, but it also needs to be understood in a sense. The impermanence needs to be understood in a sense that it's not like an impersonal observation of everything is constantly changing. Thus, nothing is really permanent. The impermanence refers to the sense of self that is attached to the ownership of things. That's when you feel, well, that's when you regard things permanently, which is when those things change. That's when you feel that impermanence as unpleasant. Hence, anicca and dukkha are the characteristics of things. So, impermanence, anicca, should be understood in the sense of that, yes, things are impermanent in a sense of they're changing. But it's more like that they're changing outside of the scope of your own will, of your own control, which means things can be pleasing, agreeable, can obey your will until they don't. So it's a recognition that this outer, like what is inconceivable to access with your intention, with your will, with your control, that's where things are rooted in. They're rooted in that inaccessible, in that which you cannot control. Thus they are impermanent, because when things change, and they will, you won't be able to foresee it, so to speak. Even if you expect, say you expect something will change this very second, when change happens, it's always a surprise on that existential level. You cannot see the moment that things change, especially if you're personally involved with it. So that's why anicca needs to be understood in that personal sense. As Nyanamoli also pointed out, it's not like that things that don't matter to us are impermanent. Yeah, they're impermanent, but nobody cares about it. The Buddha's teaching, the Dhamma, deals with things that matter to you, to see them as impermanent. Now that's the practice, and obviously the liberation can result from that, because the things that you're not involved with. Emotionally, with a view, you don't really care. I mean, they can change, and anything can happen to them, will make a difference to you. And that impermanence is not really impermanence that results in anatta, if it's understood, because you don't really. So you need to take things that your sense of self is involved with. There is a sense of self-view, there is the appropriation as mine, and then recognizing those things while you're holding them as mine, as being outside of the scope or even the possibility of your own intention and will, which means fundamentally they're utterly inaccessible. They have arisen on their own. Because of that, they will cease on their own. Your entire domain of control, sense of ownership, everything else is completely secondary to it and can never be more than that. So that's why Arahant, when he fully understands this, he doesn't turn into a robot or somebody who is not aware of his intentions. It's just he cannot anymore misconceive his intentions as to spill, so to speak, into this inaccessible domain of things' origination. He recognizes the limit, the extent of possibility of control, intentional intention, cetana and all. Having fully understood it, he stops misconceiving it. Because of that, he can still intend, think, speak, and so on, have preferences even, but none of that can pervert into that view of ownership. And that's how we come to these inversions or perversions of perception and view and the mind. The point is, everybody starts with a self-centered experience, with a sense of self, perversions of perception and the mind. Every experience, unenlightened experience, starts with self-centeredness, with appropriation, which means that's what takes priority. I am, thus things are mine. If a person starts to practice and ponder on anicca correctly, then the evidence is going to start to contradict the assumed picture of your own experience, of that sense of self. And that's when you start to realize that things are mine, not because I am. It's I am because I keep taking things as mine, mistakenly. So that's already that perversion of ownership that arises on account of the perversion of perception, perceiving things that have arisen on their own, outside of the scope of your own intention, of your own perception for that matter, perceiving them as if they are arisen for you or within you. So in that sense, you're already perverting that inherent impossibility of ownership, which is what anicca is, as something that you thoroughly own. But even that perversion is possible to exist only because things have arisen on their own outside of your scope of your intention and perception. So that's why once this becomes apparent, well then it's impossible. Then you don't have to go and undo these perversions. It's not knowing this, that's why it's perverted. Because even that perversion cannot escape the nature of things having arisen outside of the scope of your ownership. The nature of things as impermanent. So whether you pervert them or not, they are impermanent. Perversion just keeps you blind in regard to that impermanence. Hence, when impermanence is seen correctly, the perversion is gone. And the same. So, what you perceive, those are the views you're going to be developing. So, once the perception is perverted, the views are perverted. The assumption, the upadana. Once the views are perverted, then the whole experience, the whole mind is perverted, equally perverted. So it's not necessarily happening in succession as to 1, 2, 3. It's more like 3 layers of perversion, of simultaneously present perversion, that's all rooted in the same thing. So you can undo, or you can understand the principle of perversion and thus abandon it through either understanding the perversion of impermanence, understanding the perversion of self and not self, and understanding the perversion of unattractive and attractive. Because these 3 things share the same principle. Like we perceive attractive always on the basis of unattractive. Always, entirely. There is absolutely no exception. Like what I just said. The perversion of perception as permanent, it's always on account of things having arisen on their own beforehand. And that means arisen outside of the scope of your ownership, or the possibility of your ownership. So even the factual attractive that we perceive in the world, it's within the scope of unattractive, which means it's not truly the attractive, it's more like less unattractive, but equally unattractive in terms of sharing the same nature. And the sense of self, the same. There comes what I mentioned with the sense of mine. Once you start undoing the sense of mine, then you realize that this self, which has been taken to be me, to be I am, it's actually not in my control. Why? Because it's fully rooted, fully founded, fully arisen upon things that are outside of the scope of outside of the possibility, even of the scope of my control, my conceiving, my understanding. So you recognize that you discern the presence of the outside domain of impermanence without misconceiving it as the inside domain, as my domain, as for me. So in that sense, that which is self becomes not myself, because you cannot not see that sense of self is fully embedded, fully enclosed within this utter fundamental sense of impermanence. That it's like, even the possibility of escape, as in having something permanent apart from this, it's thoroughly inconceivable. Even in the wildest theory and imagination, you can't even conceive it as such. And for as long as that's not very clear, that's how you keep conceiving it and giving it being in this experience of your control, which is why you keep feeding the sense of that self-centeredness, that sense of self, the views, the perversion of perception, and so on. So let me just, to finish this, the verse. So the verse from the same sutta, the verse is so perceiving permanence in the impermanent, perceiving pleasure in what is suffering, perceiving a self in what is not self, perceiving attractiveness in what is unattractive, being resort to wrong views, their minds deranged, their perception twisted. Such people are bound by the yoke of Mara and do not reach security from bondage. Beings continue in samsara, going to birth and death. But when Buddhas arise in the world, sending forth a brilliant light, they reveal this Dhamma that leads to the stilling of suffering. Having heard it, wise people have regained their sanity. They have seen the impermanent as impermanent, and they have seen suffering as suffering. They have seen what is not self as not self, and they have seen the unattractive as unattractive. By the acquisition of the right view, they have overcome all suffering.